Hi, Tom.
Hi.
It's Toby.
Yeah, I see.
You can't see me though, right?
No, I see something. There's a picture.
Right, I don't know what that is, but I don't
But
have a camera.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I guess I got to dig out some stuff. I have, they're not the greatest cameras. I have 3 or 4 cameras that I picked up at yard sales and whatnot in the past. You know, that they may not be as good, but for people who don't have a camera, I can make those.
I have one, but it's broken.
Well, yeah, then you don't
So,
have one,
I mean, essentially, I don't have a camera.
right? Well, like I say, you're getting a picture out there, but I'm not sure where it's from.
I'm getting your face, but I don't know what that's supposed to be.
I'm saying you may not have it aimed right. I'm seeing a picture in the camera
Right.
Yeah.
for you.
Is it facing on your
It's not me. I'm
desk?
moving around.
Well,
But
don't try moving the camera.
It's not. Let me. Oh, you know what? You're right. It is here.
You have a camera. It's working.
Yeah, like it's on your desk.
I thought it was detached.
Hey.
Something's happening. Let me see. I have to put it at the right. Oh, there I am.
Ah,
How do you do?
Hey,
Hi,
Toby.
Charlotte.
Hi.
you're a technical wizard.
Did you find that the talking part was very slow?
Yes.
He's
It
having a
was very
bandwidth
slow.
problem.
Hi, Gail.
I'm trying to look around my house
How
for a
come we're
long
getting
cable.
How come we're getting such good reception?
Well,
And
he's
he
wireless all the way back to the office. He's in the chapel with a wireless link.
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Hi.
I'm in my
hi.
office now.
Yeah.
It's a better connection because it's wired,
Yeah, much.
right? Much better. So, you know, we'll keep experimenting with this, right?
Okay,
I mean,
it's interesting.
you know, I may wind up doing it from my desk. I mean, that's clearly the strongest connection. So, you know, I could possibly do it from my desk. As I said before, Kurt Levinson, who knows from this stuff, is coming to my house tomorrow to double the speed and the bandwidth of the Wi-Fi in our house.
Nice.
If that's a better solution, I'll do it from there. We're just, you know, it's trial and error, and like I said, it's not just a question of the equipment that we have at the shul. It's not simply a question of the strength of the Wi-Fi. It's not simply a question of the speed of the computer. It's also Zoom itself is under significant stress.
Oh, right.
They're getting like 10 times the usage that they normally do. So we'll see. Okay, so so Toby's here, Gail's here, Mona's here, Ricardo's here, Charlotte's here, Tom's here, Jocelyn, hello. We're actually missing a couple of people who normally are in the class.
I'm gonna sign off.
All right.
Are you trying to get a million for the last last Sitzker? Or the oops. So I say I go get Linda. But,
We're done. The service is done.
Okay. For me, it ended in the middle of your Kaddish. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No, the service is done.
That's fine. No, I was only worried about me. I don't need it. I was looking to be a 10th.
Right. No, I get it. And it's appreciated.
I couldn't. I had problems at my end. I couldn't get. I kept trying to pop in. It would come up and say, "Not right now, thank you very much." But I've gone over to a cable as well. I went over to my computer that's cable hooked up. So, but still, you're right. Everyone and their brother is Zooming.
Right.
The only thing that's really changed on my house, it used to be at 5 o'clock thereabouts. Things started getting flaky because everyone was coming home from work.
Right. Yeah. All right. So so we'll start in with the Rashi class. Nice to see everybody, and just as a reminder, it would be preferable for you to mute your computer, to mute your microphone when you're not speaking, so there's no feedback. Obviously, this is a class and we discuss, so therefore you have to remember to unmute your microphone when you want to when you want to see something.
Do you have an idea of how to do that?
Um,
Lower left-hand corner.
it should be the lower left-hand corner, but you're using an iPad, which is a
Yeah.
completely different type of animal
Oh,
than
okay. I see
a
it.
computer.
Okay.
I mean, I can mute you,
Okay.
but I can mute everybody, but I won't be able to unmute you. If you can't, if you Susan, if you want to say something, Sue, and you can't figure out how to unmute yourself, go like
Okay.
this, and I'll unmute you.
Oh,
Okay?
I think I just saw it. I'll try it.
Okay,
Look
it's
at
on
your
the,
screen.
I
Look
use a pad. It's on the lower,
Oh, you did. She muted herself.
She did it.
Okay, great.
okay.
Excellent. All right. So, Parashat Vayakhel. If you happen to have an Eitz Chaim Chumash, it's page 552. But if you don't have one, well, it's still 552, but that's not particularly useful information to you. Okay, so one of the things that's important to remember, and it becomes relevant for this parsha especially. I mean, those of you who are regulars or semi-regulars in the class, or even even in the come to Saturday morning services where sometimes talk about it. The parasha itself is also a literary unit, right? That is to say, I mean, even if you have like the most fundamentalist view of the origin of the Torah, right? Moses went up Mount Sinai with a pencil and a notepad, and God dictated the Torah to him, and then Moses came down. Nobody believes that God said, oh, and by the way, the parshas should start here and stop here, right? I mean, that was a decision that the rabbis made. And in this particular class, all right, in this particular parsha rather, so let's look at the first verse. Okay, Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael vayomer alehem. Moses assembled the whole community of the Israelites to say to them, Ele hadvarim asher tziva Adonai la'asot otam. These are the things which the Lord has commanded that you should do. Okay, so Vayakhel, right? So Moses gathered. Okay, what word do you see in that word Vayakhel? Gail, hold on. To unmute.
Vayakhel, which means the word kehilat is. Okay, one more time.
Right.
We see kaf hey lamed, which is the root for congregation.
Right, exactly. Right. Vayakhel, the three-letter root is kuf hey lamed kahal, right, which is the same root that gives us kehilah. Kehilat Shalom, right? So Moses made a congregation of all of the people of Israel. Okay, so if we look at Rashi, and I hope most of you actually have the text, Vayakhel Moshe, Moses assembled, okay, Lemochorat Yom HaKippurim Kishayarad min Hahar, the day after Yom Kippur, when he came down from the mountain. Somebody want to explain that to me? How does Rashi know it's the day after Yom Kippur?
Isn't it accepted that it was on Yom Kippur that
What?
this was given?
I'm sorry, that what was given?
Oh, that okay, not the Torah, the instructions or whatever.
No, not just that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So and this is one of the problems with the fact that we don't read the whole parasha, right? So we don't remember from last Shabbat what went right before because we didn't read it, okay? Right before this, all right, so the last sort of thing in the previous parasha is the sin of the golden calf, right? The sin of the golden calf. And then God says, I'm going to destroy the whole people of Israel. And what does Moses say? I mean, obviously, he talks him out of it, right? But what does he specifically say? Anybody remember? What's the threat that he uses? All right, I'm going to...
I know, Rabbi.
Yeah.
That God broke his promise or something to that effect?
That's part of it, but it's not just, it's stronger than that. Okay, Moses says, if you're going to do that, write me out of your book.
That's right.
Right? In other words, Moses is saying, look, God, you want to destroy the Israelite people, I can't stop you. Okay, but if you do that, I no longer agree to be a character in this book that you're writing, right? So God says, well, I don't have much of a Torah without Moshe, right? I haven't got much of a Torah without Moshe, so I guess I better forgive the Israelites, all right? And then he gives Moses the second set of tablets, and Moses comes down the mountain. And the text of the Torah does not tell us when that took place, but according to the sages, and thus according to Rashi, it took place on Yom Kippur. Okay, why on Yom Kippur? I mean, think about it. What's Yom Kippur? What's the whole point of the day?
Atoning for sins.
He's returning.
Well, it's not
The book of life, the Sefer Chaim is closed.
right. The Sefer Chaim is closed, but what happens to us at the end of Yom Kippur?
We're absolved of our sins.
We're absolved of our
Sins.
sins, right? Okay, there's no greater sin committed by the Jewish people than the sin of the golden calf, right?
Right.
No greater sin. So if there's no greater sin, then there's no greater forgiveness, right? Than God forgiving the sin of the golden calf, right? So that's on Yom Kippur. So, it's interesting. I mean, my gut feeling is if you ask most people, why is Yom Kippur on the day it is? They say, because it's 10 days after Rosh Hashanah and it's the 10 days of repentance, right? But there's actually a specific historical event that, at least for the rabbis, they believed took place on Yom Kippur, and that is the Moses' descent from Mount Sinai with the second set of tablets, concretizing God's forgiveness. Okay, so that's why. So that was yesterday, and now we're going into all these laws. Okay, this word is a he-feel causative expression, right? I explained that in this class and also Shabbat morning a few weeks ago. Okay, we don't delve into a lot of Hebrew grammar in this class, right? But the he-feel, all right. In other words, you have a hey, and then the root that comes after it is causative. Okay, so Vayakhel, so that's in the past tense. Lahakhil is to gather. Okay, so lahachtiv is to dictate, right? To cause somebody to write, kotev, right? Lahashlim is to cause somebody to conclude. Maftir, right? Maftir, lahaftir is also to conclude. Okay, so he's explaining, in case you don't know the grammar, he's explaining what Vayakhel means, right? But the more important part of the commentary is the fact that this took place on Yom Kippur. Okay, and that's actually a very profound thought, right? But it's even more profound because so we go from Moses coming down with the second set of tablets, which means that Israel has been forgiven, and now God's giving them all kinds of different laws. Okay, now why on the day after Yom Kippur would God feel the need to do that?
Well, you've been good, you're cleared, and you're going to start going back to who you were before.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, the fact that you are a pious Jew on Yom Kippur does not particularly impress me, right? If you're still pious the day after, that means something, right?
That's not any different than what you say to a bar or bat mitzvah.
Bingo. I was just going to go there. That's exactly what I say to a bar. Dee, you wanna give that over?
You always say, I'm not going to quote you. I'm just going to give
paraphrase.
Yes. You always tell them, I'm not so impressed about what you've done today. The question is whether you show up after today, or words to that effect.
Right, exactly. I mean, it varies, but I usually say something like, you probably think today is the most important Shabbat of your life, but it's not. Next Shabbat is, right? Because this you have to be here today, right? You have to be here today, right? If you come again next Shabbat, it means you want to be.
Right.
Okay, and occasionally they do. Usually they don't. But but the point is, right, that Judaism is not just about what we do on Yom Kippur, and it's not just about Shabbat, right? It's not just about it's about how we live our lives at all times, right? And that's the idea that's expressed by all of these laws being given the day after Yom Kippur. Okay, so the next verse, verse 2, Sheshet Yamim Te'aseh Melacha, 6 days may labor be done. Uvayom Hashvi'i Yihiyeh Lechem Kodesh, the 7th day you shall have sanctity. Shabbat Shabbaton Ladonai, a day of complete rest to the Lord. Kol ha'oseh vo melacha yumat. Okay, everyone who does labor on that day shall be put to death. Okay, we'd all be dead, right? But before I get there, I actually 2 weeks ago because what's also fascinating, and this is why there's not a lot of, I didn't bring a lot, but there's actually not a lot of Rashi on this, because this deals, right, primarily with the construction of the tabernacle and the dedication of it. And we already read that 2 weeks ago, right? And it's the same thing, and it's almost the same word for word. Okay, so the commentators have, a field day with that too. And what they say is, well, the first time is God giving it, and the second time is them doing it, right? And but we actually have a lot of that. I mean, if you think about eating, right? We say a prayer before we eat, and we say a prayer after we eat, right? When you come up for an aliyah to bless the Torah, right? You bless the Torah before it's read, you bless the Torah after it's read, right? So generally we say, or we can say that the one blessing, so the first blessing is for the food itself. The second blessing is for the beneficial effect the food has on us, right? The first blessing is for the gift of the Torah. The second blessing is for us actually studying and doing the Torah. Okay, similarly to why we have two holidays about the Torah. We have Shavuot and we have Simchat Torah, right? So, so that's one answer. Now, I just want to, now this isn't from Rashi for this week, but I prepared it, I didn't get to it. What's the difference between Shabbat and Shabbat Shabbaton?
Ooh.
Okay, Shabbat, a day of rest, and Shabbat Shabbaton, a day of complete rest. What's the difference, do you think? All right, it's kind of a tough question, I admit. All right, holidays are also called Shabbat, right? I mean, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot are also called Shabbat, right? What is the difference in the rules between Hag, a holiday, and Shabbat? Does anybody know?
No, but Yom Kippur is a Shabbat, still Shabbat Shabbaton, right?
Yom Kippur, Shabbat, Shabbaton, exactly. Right. Okay, so so Shabbat and Yom Kippur, which has the law of a Shabbat, it's easier if I say what you are allowed to do on Hagim that you're not allowed to do on Shabbat.
Oh, you can't cook
Right, you can't cook on
fire.
Shabbat, but you can cook
on the
on
holiday.
holidays.
Right.
Right, now it's supposed to be cook on that day for eating on that day. Okay, it's not, cook up a whole big, 6-gallon thing of soup to eat through the whole rest of the week. But you can prepare on that day what you're going to consume on that day. You can adjust a fire. You can transfer an already kindled flame. You can't light a new fire, but you can adjust and transfer a pre-existing flame. And you can also carry.
Right.
If you go to an observant neighborhood on Yontif, you'll see men carrying their talitot to shul. Right? You won't see men carrying their talitot to shul. Well, nowadays a lot of neighborhoods have an eruv, right? Yeah. But if you're in a neighborhood that doesn't have an eruv, or it's a community that doesn't hold by the eruv, like most Hasidic communities don't hold by the eruv, then you won't see people carrying their talis to shul on Shabbat, right? Or pushing a baby carriage. I mean, it's one of the reasons why eruv is an important benefit to people's lives, because modern Orthodox tend to have a lot of kids, and if the woman can't, or even the man, I mean, depends how modern they are, right? Can't push the stroller to shul, then they can't go to shul. Right. All right. But now, so this teaches us that the work of the Mishkan does not supersede Shabbat, right? And we saw that again 2 weeks ago, right? I even spoke about it, right? That essentially, God gives all of these laws for constructing the tabernacle and the garments and so on and so forth, and then he says what? Ach et shabtotai tishmoro, right? Nevertheless, you shall observe my Sabbaths, right? Which we understand to mean that God is saying, here's all the stuff that you do on Shabbat. Here's all the stuff that you do for constructing the tabernacle.
Not on Shabbos.
But not on Shabbos.
Right.
Right? And that's how we know what's allowed and not allowed. Essentially, if you look at, all right, so there are a couple of things that the Torah explicitly says that you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. One of them is kindling a fire. We just read that. Right? But mostly it says do not do milacha. Right, and I'm not going to even translate milacha, because you translate milacha as work. Somebody says, well, I don't consider chopping wood work. I consider it recreation,
Right.
whatever. But that's not the way halacha works. It's not really, it doesn't really matter what you consider, right? It matters what we rabbis consider. But the whole edifice of the forbidden labors on Shabbat is derived from the construction of the tabernacle. In other words, anything that was necessary to construct the tabernacle is the type of labor that's considered to be forbidden on Shabbat. Now, Rashi here does not comment on the fact that the Torah also tells us that somebody violates Shabbat is put to death, right? But he did comment on that two weeks ago, and he pointed out that this is only with what's known as hatra'ah. Okay, we didn't have a chance to discuss it really 2 weeks ago, but capital punishment in Judaism, right, in rabbinic law, yes or no, exists or does not exist?
Biblically, it did.
Biblically, what about rabbinically?
No.
All right, rabbinically, it's extremely restricted. Okay, first of all, the Torah says explicitly you need 2 witnesses, right? You need 2 witnesses to convict. You cannot convict, let alone execute, on the word of 1 witness alone, right? So immediately a huge chunk of the convictions in the American judicial system are out the window, right? Because it's very common to convict somebody on the testimony of 1 witness. But beyond that, there's the requirement for hatra'ah, which means warning. Okay, so I am a criminal, right? And I am about to kill somebody, right? There have to be 2 witnesses, and the 2 witnesses have to say, hey, you, do you realize that if you kill that person, you could be put to death, right? And I must then say, yes, right? It's like the Miranda war, right? I understand these rights and I waive them, right? Yes, I understand that I could be put to death. Nevertheless, I intend to kill this person, right? And if that requirement is met, person could be put to death, right? Not very likely. Okay, so Rashi doesn't point that out here, but he's already pointed it out 2 weeks ago.
Rabbi, does that apply? Somewhere we were reading weeks ago about, and you made a joke about it, that parents could have we were tying it to the Haggadah and Passover, but parents could have an insubordinate or stubborn child stoned to death or some such.
Right.
Does that apply to something just like that?
They did apply something, I mean, even more restrictive, okay? So you ask, and I'll answer because we don't have to cover, a certain specific amount of material. The key is that we learn something, right? So in that passage about the stubborn and rebellious son, the parents have to say to the judges, this our son does not listen to our voice. Okay, in the singular, right? The 2 parents say it, but they say our son does not listen to our voice. Okay, as an educator, that should automatically, right, spark your interest, right? That the parents have to talk with 1 voice, right? Even just homiletically. And we know that behavioral problems can occur when the parents don't talk with 1 voice.
Right.
Right? So we can understand it homiletically, but the rabbis understood it not only homiletically, but literally. In other words, that in order to execute a stubborn and rebellious son, right, if you're hearing either the mother or the father, but you can't see them, you can't tell whether it's the mother or the father. Okay? They have to have exactly the same literal voice. Okay? And since among the things that affect the timbre and volume and so on of your voice is your physical stature, right? The mother and the father have to have identical physical stature. Okay, and only if those conditions are met can the stubborn and rebellious son be executed. Okay, and then the rabbis go on to say, Ben sorer umore lo haya velo nivra. A case like this never occurred, right? Never occurred, never gonna occur. Okay, so if so, why is the law given? So we could have the merit of interpreting it properly. Okay, but yes, they absolutely, made capital punishment a theoretical possibility, but a practical impossibility. All right, so any questions or comments on that? If not, we will skip quite a bit ahead to verse 26. And all the women whose hearts uplifted them with wisdom spun the goat hair. Okay. Now, I'm just going to read the Rashi. Spun the goat hair. This constituted a superior skill, for they, the women, spun it on the backs of the goats. Right? In other words, this skill gets in the Torah. It's not that they're just spinning goat hair. Right? They're spinning the goat hair while it's still on the goats, okay, which is a tremendously incredible skill.
And painful
right?
for the goat.
What?
Painful for the goat.
Painful for, yeah, but these are special goats, right? And they're special goats, and they're happy to undergo it because it's for the construction of the tabernacle, right? It's for the construction of the tabernacle. I mean, what better fate if you're a goat than to have your hair be used in constructing the tabernacle, right? But now, why does it say this? All right, because you have to go back to the Hebrew. All right, the translation says they spun the goat hair. Okay, but the Hebrew actually says tavu et ha-izim, which if you were translated literally is they spun the goats. Right? I mean, we all know that it means goat hair, but the Hebrew doesn't actually say, I mean, or you could simply say that the word for goat hair and the word for goat is the same. Okay, but Rashi says this was an incredible skill because they were able to weave the hair while it was still on the goats. Okay, now the next thing, right? So I'm going to look at 36:5 and 36:6. Okay, so they spoke to Moses, saying that is to say, the people who are doing the work, the workmen said to Moses, the people are bringing more than is needed for the tasks entailed in the work that the Lord has commanded to be done. Moses thereupon had this proclamation made throughout the camp, that no man or woman make further effort toward gifts for the sanctuary, so the people stopped bringing. Their efforts had been more than enough for all the tasks to be done. Okay. All right, some of you have been involved on the board, right? So when is the last time at a board meeting that Terry gave the following report? We've got a problem.
We have too much money.
Right, the people are, not only we have too much money, the people are donating too much.
Yeah.
Right? The people are donating too much. We need to tell them to stop donating.
My mother would say, Halavai.
Right, Halavai, right? But that's what happened, okay? More than enough for the labor, more than is needed for the labor. So the people stopped bringing. Vayakhel, an expression donating, holding back. Okay, now Rashi just sort of explains the language or the grammar. But I am interested in a different question. Why is this happening? Why are people like so generous with their gifts that the workmen have to complain and say, people are giving too much, make them stop? What's going on?
They want to get the tax deductions.
They want to get the tax deductions, right? Okay, spoken. Thank you, Mr. Ginsburg at irs.gov. Anybody else?
Well, it could be like what's happening now. A lot of people are starting to give. The question is whether they will later, and maybe they need to save some up for later. I mean, among other things, I also still are fresh from the golden calf thing.
Still fresh from the golden calf thing, right? And they've been forgiven, right? They did the worst imaginable sin, and they've been forgiven, right? So I think that's what's going on. They have this tremendous
Guilt.
burst, well, guilt, but also a tremendous burst of religious enthusiasm, right? Because they have been forgiven, right? And so it brings out now what I want to say. This is not Rashi. This is Maimonides, and I've spoken about this on Shabbat before, but it's worth repeating. Why is it worth repeating? Because it's my class, and I decide. Right? All right, there is a rabbinic principle, ein mukdam u'me'uchar b'Torah. Okay, literally, there's not early and late in the Torah, but that means is that the events in the Torah are not narrated in chronological order. Okay, because if they're in chronological order, you have the instructions for the tabernacle, the sin of the golden calf, Moses saying, hey, not in your Torah unless you forgive them, second tablets, instructions for the tabernacle, right? The Maimonides says, no, that it's out of order. Okay, you had the sin of the golden calf, and then the instructions for the tabernacle. In other words, God is essentially saying to himself, I blew it here. Okay? In other words, why did he blow it? Because God didn't give them any rituals, right? I mean, what God had in mind apparently is, a religion of pure contemplation, right? God, God had in mind something like Unitarian Universalism, right? But it didn't work, right? It didn't work. God didn't give the Jews any rituals. So what did the Jews do?
Made them up.
They invented their own, right? Because this is what we like to do, right? This is what we like to do. I mean, I don't know if any of you ever saw this parody of what Christmas would be like if it was a Jewish holiday.
No.
Right? How tall does the tree have to be? Right? How many brown spots are allowed on it? Right? How many days before Christmas are you allowed to put up the tree? Right? How many gifts do you have to give? Right? What is the minimum value of a gift? Right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? And it's funny because it's all true. Right? It's all true. If we put up Christmas trees, we'd ask these questions. How tall? Can it have a brown spot? Can I put it up? Does it have to go right before Christmas, or can I put it up, let's say starting Thanksgiving, et cetera, right? Because this is what we do. right? So since God didn't give us any rituals, right? We made them up ourselves. And God said, bad idea, right? Bad idea, right? You cannot leave this people to their own devices. Right? You cannot leave this people to I'll tell you a story. I don't know if any of you, well, you should, some of you should have heard of Rabbi David Hartman, okay? Because we did a few years ago the program from the Hartman Institute, right? Which was founded by David Hartman. I heard Rabbi Hartman give a talk once, and he was trying to explain why God chose the Jews of all people, right? And God says, if I can take this people and turn them into mensches, I am truly omnipotent. Right? So that's the reason for all these rituals. Okay, we're gonna end a little bit early, but I just want to end on one last thing. Okay, so this Shabbat is also the last of 4 Shabbatot when we have a special maftir, right? We read from 2 Torah scrolls. Okay, and this Shabbat is also potentially, not this year, one of the Shabbatot where we could have 3 Torah scrolls, because Rosh Chodesh could also fall on this Shabbat. It doesn't. We bless the new moon this Shabbat, but it's not the actual new moon on this Shabbat, right? So then we would have 3. So just as well we're not meeting in person, although the reason is not so great. But the special reading is Exodus 12, and it's HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim. This month shall be to you the first of the months. And then it goes on. It is the commandment for the Paschal sacrifice that took place in Egypt. Okay, and I must say, and I'm not going to dwell or linger on this, but I must say that rereading this year, where God says there's going to be a plague and it's going to come into everybody's house, but if you put the blood on the lintel, you'll be protected. Right? Enough said. Right? I mean, I wish we could guarantee that worked. Right? I wish we could guarantee that worked. It was kind of freaky for me to read that. But the point is, it's the commandment to prepare the Paschal lamb, right? And so we read it early enough. We read it either the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan or on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because according to that reading, we have to have, like, Pesach is the 14th of Nisan, but we have to actually have the lamb ready to go by the 10th of Nisan. Right? So everybody said, oh, got to go get my lamb, right? By the way, speaking of going to get your lamb, one of the things that, this is stream of consciousness, but that's okay. One of the things that has been worrying me is how we're going to do our Pesach shopping.
Yeah.
Right? How are we going to do our Pesach shopping? Well, I have been told that Moti's Market is going to or already has introduced online shopping. Okay, where you can place your order through their website online, and then they will deliver it to you. I mean, there's a fee, but I think it's worth it not to have to go out and go into the store. So if I am able to ascertain that is in fact true and find out how it's done and all the details, I'll get the word out among the congregation. I really do hope it's true, because it would be, otherwise we may go back to the original system and everybody goes and gets a lamb. Slaughters it themselves. But what's interesting about this reading also is that if you go back to the very beginning of the Torah, the very first commentary on Rashi, Rashi says, he rejects this suggestion, but he brings it up. The Torah really should have begun with Exodus 12, because Exodus 12 is considered the first commandment that's given to the Israelite people as a whole, right? There are commandments that are before Exodus 12, but they're either given to individuals or they're given to all humanity. Exodus 12 is the first commandment that's given to the people of Israel as a whole. And therefore, that's where the Torah really should have begun. And then he explains why that's not so and so and so forth. But if you thought that that was the case, that everything prior to Exodus 12 was superfluous, what does that say about the role of the Torah?
That's superfluous as well.
Well, everything before it would be superfluous, because in other words, the Torah simply exists to give rules to the Jewish people.
Right.
Right? We know it does more than it does that, but it does more than that, right? It gives us a whole theology and a whole ethos, and explains, essentially explains why the world exists.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a very pivotal, if you've ever learned in yeshiva or whatever, you're gonna when you come across this, it's gonna jar your memory, because it's literally the very first Rashi, okay, deals with this. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up the formal class at this point.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
a quick question.
Yeah,
Why is it that it seems like Orthodox people, maybe all of us, are supposed to use like a chicken bone instead of a lamb shank bone on the Seder plate?
Okay, great question.
Can't find it.
Well, no, it's an excellent question. Okay. Ashkenazim have a very strong tradition not to eat lamb at the Seder. Okay. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense at all, because the whole center of Passover, when the temple stood, was to slaughter the Paschal lamb and eat it at the Seder. Right? But we're not slaughtering the Paschal lamb because we don't have a temple. We don't have a temple, right? So we don't want to give the appearance, right? We don't want somebody to, see you guys eating lamb, and they walk by your house and they say, oh, wow, the Lebowitz are eating lamb, right? They slaughtered the Paschal lamb. I thought we weren't supposed to do that, right? Or even the temple has been rebuilt and somehow I didn't hear about it, right? And that's why they're eating Paschal lamb, right? So to avoid any possibility of creating the impression that we're eating the Paschal lamb, we don't eat lamb at all, right? Now, interestingly, we Ashkenazim have a strong tradition not to eat lamb. Sfaradim have a strong tradition to eat
lamb. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I would say that there's a reason for that. Okay, is that they live in lands where lamb is popular and widespread, right? There weren't too many people eating lamb in Russia, right? It's a warm weather food, essentially. It's a Mediterranean food. It's not a Northern European food for the most part. And if you look at, we don't, because realistically, we could eat anything we wanted, right? We want lamb, we eat lamb, right? We want kosher Wagyu beef, we eat kosher Wagyu beef, right? We're, we can have whatever we want.
But Rabbi,
let me hold it, okay? I'll take the question when I finish the point. But material culture actually has impacted the development of halacha a lot. Like, if you look, for example, the Seder, right? So the Mishnah was written in Eretz Yisrael, right? In the land of Israel. And the Mishnah says 4 cups of wine, right? And it has to be wine. Okay, and then you look at the Talmud, which was written in Babylonia, and it says it doesn't have to be wine. It could be the local beverage too. Okay, now why would the Mishnah say must be wine? And it comes, it doesn't have to be wine. Could be something else. Gail.
It's because we're in Babylonia. They didn't have wine, so they had whatever they had.
Exactly, right?
That was what I was going to say before.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I dated somebody who was Sephardic, and I was invited by his parents to their second night Seder. And I grew up Ashkenaz, and when we sat down for our meal, they had chicken soup, of course, but they had noodles. And in my upbringing, that was a no-no. And I delved into it further, both with them and with the rabbi that I worked with at the time. And the answer was that, as in most cases, those things that we do besides just tradition are determined by geography, where we live, and availability of what we can get.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's a wide range of Passover customs. I mean, I like, for example, Hasidim, right? If you've ever gone Passover shopping and you see a product and it says non-gebrachts, right? Non-gebrachts.
Mm-hmm.
Or a caterer, all our food is non-gebrachts. What the heck is that? Okay, gebrachts is Yiddish for broken. Okay,
Right.
So we're not eating broken food. No, it means broken matzah.
Right.
In other words,
Shmira matzah.
no, it means that they don't use any matzah products. Okay, Hasidim do not eat wet matzah.
Right.
Okay, so Hasidim don't eat knedlach, they don't eat matzah kugel, they don't eat matzah brai, right? All of these things, they wouldn't coat chicken in matzah meal. They wouldn't put matzah farfel in there. They don't do that because there's a fear that maybe there's some flour in there that wasn't properly baked and it'll come into contact with water and chametz and da-da-da-da.
So that's why Shmira matzah is so important to them.
Well, that's a little bit different because shmura matzah is made, it's more stringently watched.
Right.
Okay, but actually, oddly enough, the handmade matzah is more likely to have unbaked dough in it because the quality control isn't there as it would be in a machine. Right. But the thing is that they don't. So when we lived in Baltimore, all right, Kelly and I had some good friends who were, I'll use the term ultra Orthodox. Okay. He came from a Hasidic background. Okay. And, he had the beard and the black hat and the whole everything. And he wasn't himself Hasidic anymore, but he came from a Hasidic background and that family observed that custom. Okay. And we knew, but one of their guests for Seder, who was fully as ultra-Orthodox as they are, but not Hasidic, right? So we're having the soup, and what does he do? He takes some matzah and crumbles it up into his soup. Shmura matzah, right? And made shmura matzah at $35 a pound. Right? Crumbles it up into, you would have thought that he had brought a live lizard into the room, right? From the reaction, okay? And so that made all the, it made the bowl and the spoon and the soup. Treif, chametz, right? So they had to take it and put it away for the whole rest of Pesach, right? And this is an ultra-Orthodox guest of an ultra-Orthodox family,
Right.
right? But there's different people have different observances, right? And so now, having said that, and people don't know, right? So let's assume. All right. So laying aside for a second that the conservative movement now says we can eat kitniyot, right? Beans and rice and whatnot, right? Many of us still don't.
Right.
I do not. I may this Pesach, depending on how difficult it is to get other stuff, right? I mean, I'm not going to go without protein for Pesach. But you observe that you don't eat kitniyot, and you go to a Sephardic home and they serve kitniyot.
That's what I used. Yeah.
What do?
That was my dilemma.
Well, all right. So the halachic answer is you can't eat it, but it doesn't affect anything else.
Right.
In other words, go ahead, eat the meat, go ahead, eat the vegetables, leave the rice on the plate.
Right.
That's all you have to do.
Right.
Right. And similarly, if you are non-gebrachs and you're served gebrachs, really you should just not eat it. You don't have to go crazy. But, that's what people do. All right. Thanks very much. We'll get through this.
Don't hang up.
Anyway.
Question: Why is
Yeah.
the signal fine now, but it wasn't for Minion? I mean, your speaking is perfectly clear now.
Right. Okay. So the answer to that is when I was for Minyan, I did it in the chapel, right? Because of the atmosphere, right?
Right.
Of people seeing
Right.
the chapel. The problem is that because there's no wired connection. It's just Wi-Fi. Okay. Now I'm sitting at my desk. It's a wired connection.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to have to work on it. I mean, I don't think that there's anything that I can do to boost the Wi-Fi in the chapel. We already have a Wi-Fi extender.
Okay. I asked for this reason, because if that's where we were going to show that what I thought was a very important documentary, and you had gone to the trouble of
Right, but I've downloaded it to my computer, so it's
so
not,
wouldn't have the same problem.
we won't have the same problem.
Okay. Now you can't. You can imagine, but you can't hear yourself. So I was simply trying to tell you that the way it sounded was a combination.
No, I understood that, but I
wasn't telling you to do something about it.
I know, but I mean, from my, you see, this is the difference between men and women. It really is, right? I mean, a woman will just tell a man something, and the man thinks she's telling him to fix it.
No, I wasn't.
No, but right?
Yes.
Right?
I wanted you to
Tom's
know that you
shaking his
sounded
head yes
somewhere
vigorously, right?
not-
So when you tell me that is happening, and all you're doing is telling me that is happening, right? I am getting frustrated because I hear you telling me to fix something that I cannot fix.
all I wanted, what I still want to tell you, what it sounds like.
We're going around in circles, Dee. So
you haven't let me tell you what I was trying to tell you.
Okay, tell me.
And now I'm serious, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful for any reason, but it sounds like a combination of when the pixelated is a problem, it sounded somewhere like between being underwater and, God forbid, somebody who's had a stroke and is trying to get the words out.
Right.
And I just wanted you to know how it's being received.
Okay, so here's where we stand. Okay, I don't think I'm going to do it from the chapel anymore because it's not of satisfactory quality. Tom, maybe you can come in and put a big picture of the ark.
Actually, if you want, we have that mini ark. That small one.
All right,
I could put that behind. Literally, I can put it behind you.
I know, but you the kid with Tom.
Some things start from a joke, or somebody like a.
So what I'm gonna do like I said, Kurt is coming over tomorrow, and we are supposedly doubling the Wi-Fi in my house. Okay, if we successfully double the Wi-Fi in my house, then I'm going to do services from my house, because there's no reason for me to schlep back to sit at my desk.
Right.
If the quality is the same
Right.
if I'm sitting at my dining room table. Right?
Right.
If the quality is not good from my house also, because it's still Wi-Fi, it's not a wired connection, albeit it's supposedly now going to be like a super duper connection, then I'll come in, but I'll do services from my desk. Right? It's just, it's a question of trial and error. But the answer to your question is, this is a wired connection, so the quality is much better than a wireless connection.
Well, it's good now.
All right.
Right,
Great.
yeah. it is good.
Anyway, I have a
Everybody-
quick question.
Yes,
It's a
ma'am.
different question.
Different question.
Yeah, so today I got my official census form thing.
Me
And
too.
one of the questions it asks for is where you're from.
Right.
Okay, I'm white. And then they want you to say, are you from Ireland or
Right,
Finland?
right.
Or,
I saw that because I did
French.
mine this morning too. I personally put Eastern Europe. I mean,
I was going to write Ashkenazi.
no,
That's what I was gonna
you know what? To tell you the truth. I mean, you asked a question. Okay, so I'm going to answer it honestly. I started typing Jewish, and then I said, you know what? I'm not sure I want to put Jewish on a government form with this government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So I erased Jewish and put Eastern European.
Anyway, that's why I'm asking the question. You know, I think before I, listed what countries they were from, but it's really,
Right.
it's an interesting question. Plus, they didn't list the poor people from the native Australians were exempted too.
Now, Rabbi, if you're a true conspiracy freak, they saw you erase it.
I'm sure they did. And they're probably hearing me say it now anyway. Right? But I'm telling you, because I wouldn't bring it up, but you asked.
I'm not even doing it online. I'm going to wait until they send me one to mail in because I don't trust doing this stuff.
I just got my mail-in one, but I haven't opened it yet.
Yeah,
Well,
mine came today too.
Now to some extent, this is also like a generational thing because I am at 60, the youngest person here right now. I mean, my default is if I can do it online, I do it online.
Yeah, but this
Who stuffed that envelope and how long ago?
And the point is that they observed that when you even if you put it in on paper, it's still going into a
That's
computer.
true.
Right,
Right.
right.
But
Right.
here's another question. There's two separate people in this household,
Right.
and we only got one, and it just
No,
says,
but it's one form for as many people as live in the house.
what if you're from all different places? and-
Doesn't matter.
No, but it's
It's per
one
person.
person and then the next person.
Okay,
When you add the next person in, you'll get those same questions answered about that person.
Yeah.
okay.
So like, hey, that second person you put in, where did you come from?
Right. I mean, like, so
I
for
haven't seen it
me,
yet, so okay.
because I did the form, right? For me, I put white Eastern European. And for Kelly, I put white Scots Irish.
What did you put for Zeke?
Not a person.
Zeke, unfortunately,
Hey.
Zeke unfortunately has cancer.
Oh, no.
Oh, oh.
So,
What's the-
and
what's
at
the
14 and a half, we're not going to treat it. So we're just going to try and
What
call
does
it
he
what-
have?
Oh.
No, that's a person to you.
What?
What does he have?
That's a
Rabbi?
person to you.
Yeah, we're not. We have to go back to the doctors. I mean, his blood work indicates that he has cancer. It's either lymphoma or the rectal glands.
Oh,
Oh, poor thing. Oh,
All right. Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
See you on,
Thank
see
you.
you on Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I
Bye. Bye.
Bye.